All right then. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about late game Hearts of Iron 4. So what I want to talk about, guys, is late game Hearts of Iron 4 and how late game Hearts of Iron 4 feels like empty. Like, once you got the late game tech, like in 1944, 45, and once you've started to defeat the allies in any way, shape, and form, whatever, you run out of things to actually do. And it has a tendency to allow nations to snowball. The two nations in question that snowball incredibly aggressively are the Soviet Union and the United States. Soviet Union, though, has run through a lot of nerfs recently due to No Step Back. An example is, for instance, when you do the 5-year plan, it eats consumer goods. And plus you have to deal with a lot of negative national spirits that affect your industry. So the Soviet Union's ability to snowball is more limited due to No Step Back. So I think that's a little victory. But on the other hand, the United States, if you do the exploit, I made this in a video a very long time ago, so forgive me if you've never seen this before, but there is a way, if you go down the limited intervention path, you are able to get onto like a partial mobilization incredibly early, 1937, even sometimes 1938, and that means that you have an untapped industry and you could just pump out lots and lots of civilian factories. Do you know what? In this circumstance, this is actually not too bad when it comes to civilian production. We've got 309 civilian factories in 1942. This is one of the games I did ages ago. So what I'm proposing with this video is how could we fix late game Hearts of Iron 4? Now, Dan, a long time ago in a dev diary, said that he wanted to add a demobilization focus to one of the expansions for Hearts of Iron 4. So what that basically means is the whole game is about increasing war tension, increasing war support, to finally go to war, to defeat said threats. And then that's pretty much it. And then the world tension is always 100%, and war support is always 100%, and that stays that place. But that's not how, historically, what happened, is it? After the war ended, everything started to de-escalate. And then, of course, we got the Cold War, but we'll save that for another day. Relatively, for the first 5 years after the war, it was relatively calm, for the most part. How would we get around those two issues? One, snowballing, and then two, world tension spiking high and never really getting below. I suppose the deal is, whenever a nation who has caused a lot of world tension, in most cases Germany, gets defeated, all of the world tension that Germany defeated should be removed. So hypothetically, let's just say Germany was defeated, annex Germany. And then all the world tension that Germany created should be instantly removed. And that means, don't forget what that means. That means that war support will drop considerably as well. Can you see that world tension plus 30% due to world tension? And also you've got defensive war plus 30% as well. So you lose. Oh, and then of course attaché. And attaché is obviously is only something you can do at war. So you're going to lose 70% of your war support immediately. And what does that mean? When you lose war support, you have to reduce mobilization, you have to reduce conscription, and so things have to go back. I mean, that's such an easy fix too. All you have to say is a nation that caused world tension, when that nation is defeated, all that world tension that was created is instantly removed. But it's really strange to me how like world tension happens, but then never gets reverted back. You know what I mean? It never gets, there's never a de-escalation, you know what I mean? I just feel like it's such an easy fix. I don't know why they've never done it. And then I suppose the second problem is snowballing. So can you imagine it? You get a little snowball, you roll it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The problem is there isn't a maximum limit of how big that snowball can get. So you just run into a situation where we just keep making civilian factories as the United States. And as you probably noticed in multiplayer games, because everyone's trading with the United States for steel and aluminium and tungsten and oil, you're getting a load of civilian factories to trade as well. Am I in this game? A little bit from Canada. A decent, loads of aluminium from the UK, loads of tungsten, loads of steel. I mean, in a multiplayer situation, it will be exponentially higher than this, but these amounts are pretty scary high to begin with, so that's pretty impressive. I wonder if you made a USA that focused on oil refining, whether people would trade with for rubber. That'd be insane. Your economy would be so big. Can you imagine? So you snowball, you get really big. Multiplayer, it's worse than single player. And I feel like there is no limit. You know what I mean? You build up your economy, and there's no top limit of how big the economy can actually be. So this is what I would propose. And I understand this is probably going to make people really, really salty. And I get why that is the case. But I feel like there needs to be an above limit to prevent a nation from becoming so unbelievably powerful that you can never get above them because they've got so many civilian factories. And it's such a simple change. All you basically do is for any civilian factory that you build, over, let's say, an arbitrary number of 200. 200 is a lot of civilian factories. It incurs like 1% consumer goods, up to a maximum of 50. So basically, you're incurring an extra 50% consumer goods on top of what you've already got. So basically, it just gives an incentive for players. Like, once you've reached, let's say, 250 civilian factories, which is a lot of civilian factories, you like have an incentive to go on to something else. I mean, this is normally how players play anyway, so it's not depriving you of anything. But the truth is, it just adds that maximum overhead limit of how many civilian factories you basically could potentially have, just to prevent these situations where you just have so many you can't even spend them anymore. And once again, these are only two nations in the game that get affected by it. It's the Soviet Union, United States. In some games, the UK, maybe if you go for Imperial Federation, that'll cause you to be a world power. And then I guess Germany if you defeat the Soviet Union, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose what you'd have to do is that for every 2 civilian factories, you'd incur 1 consumer goods, wouldn't you? And then it would incentivize you as well that if you got so many extra civilian factories from occupation, you'd have an incentive to hand them back under puppets and liberated states. It'd always like create a bureaucratic nightmare that you're controlling so many civilian factories, so the consumer goods is so unbelievably strong and heavy. Japan is super strong. Yeah, if you take out the Soviet Union, check out all of China and the Raj and Indonesia, Australia, New Zealand. Still not that strong as Japan. Not compared to the Soviet Union and the United States. You'd have to take out the Soviet Union as Japan to actually get to that level. So I just feel like there needs to be a maximum limit, and it needs to incentivize people to release nations other than blobbing out. I guess in a weird way that would also make world conquests more harder, because people would be struggling to fight that consumer goods. I just would like to see more attention from PDX for the late game. That's the main point of this argument I'm making right now. I feel like the late game needs to have some focus, and those 2 little small changes would make a massive difference. Road 56 is a lifesaver. Well, I mean, all the Road 56 does is adds more technologies, and it doesn't really make the game any better. Oh, this is a classic HOI4 mod trope. You double the amount of technology you can research, and then you also double the amount of research slots that you've got. And then at that point, all you're doing is clicking more. You know what I mean? Think about it. You've doubled the amount of technology, and you double the amount of research slots. What's the consequence of that? All it means is you're clicking more. That doesn't make a more fun experience. And that's the reason why sometimes 5056, apart from the focus tree, I think the focus trees part of Road 56 are the best part, but a lot of the other stuff that comes with it, I don't really find as interesting. My take, personally my take. Maybe I'd add work manpower to the game. Not really. I think as a one-dimensional system of recruitable population works quite fine. I think sometimes when you add extra things to the game, you don't normally make the game a better experience. Hence the reason why the changes I suggest are very simple. I'll give an example. I personally don't think sailors in EU4 makes the game a better experience. I think it just tends to cook you if you try to be a small nation and make a navy. It doesn't make the game a more fun experience. And that's the reason why they thought about adding pilot manpower for HOI4, and they choose not to. Because it felt like it would make the game more complex, but it wouldn't necessarily make it a better experience. You have got to ask yourself the question sometimes, does it make the game more fun? If the answer is yes, then hell yeah, I'm down for it. If it just makes the game more complex for the sake of complexity, it's not really worth it. And I know you guys are big history buffs, and you want to say to yourself, oh, Dave, I love history, and if it's historically accurate, I'm for that. I'm like, the truth is you're not. You're really not. You've played mods that are more historically accurate, and those mods don't add a lot to the game, and you know that. I do like that the United States now has more use for its civilian factories, because it can build inside its allies, which is really, really cool. Yeah, build inside my allies. Yay. I think that's really, really cool. I guess to take it to the next logical conclusion is that after the war is over and the game's gone 1946, 1947, all the nations in the world could get like a new focus tree that's more about the new era. I think that's the biggest flaw that we're going with at the minute. I think everyone has this idea that we need to make a big focus tree with early war, mid-war, late game, and then Cold War all in one focus tree. I think that the real meta of going forward is that when World War II's over, every nation gets a new focus tree that would appeal to the Cold War. Personally, I don't want them to do that because that's a massive waste of developer time. 2, the Cold War is horrendously boring. so just to be clear, I'm not saying that they should do this. I think you get the point I'm trying to get at. There's a few focus trees in regular HOI4 that only appear after certain conditions are made. For instance, if you become annexed as France and then you complete your focus tree as as exiled France, you get the regular focus tree back. Or for instance, as one of the warlords, you get the regular Chinese focus tree after when you've completed the warlord focus tree. Stuff like that, you know. Anyway, that's it. That's that idea. I just wanted to talk about late game, and I wanted to talk about the United States late game as well. I just thought it'd be an interesting nugget of knowledge for the sprinkle on the game.